Great. It's live streaming.
Really?
Yeah. At
Okay.
least it came up for me that it's live streaming.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there we are.
Right. It's live streaming.
Great.
Really? Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Fabulous.
Franny, do you have a rounds question for today?
I do.
Great.
Would you like to know what it is?
I just like to put it in the agenda, so that would be great.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if it was like.
It does not have to be a surprise. No, people probably would appreciate to know what it is sooner than later. I just often don't quite have it ready.
Of course, I have like 25 windows open. Here we go. All right, I'm going to just copy paste it into the chat.
Great.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Phil. You're outside.
Yeah, I'm outside because I came home and the light pole, electric pole next to the house is split in half. The fire truck's out front and they have it cordoned off, so I don't have any electricity.
Oh
Oh my gosh.
no. Sorry.
So luckily I have a link from my phone for the internet, so I'm able to be on the meeting.
Oh my goodness.
From our perspective, it looks so peaceful where you
I
are.
know. I thought it was going to be like, it's a nice day out in the shade. I thought I'd just, take a meeting outside.
Well, it's good that because our next door neighbor has an emergency generator, which is blasting away. So they at least got electricity, it seems.
Wow.
Oh man.
Hey, Spoon.
Hey family, how you doing?
Good. How are you? How's
Good.
your first couple days of school been?
Oh man, it's exciting. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. We're in structure mode, but the young people, it's like they're in the honeymoon phase, so everything is good. Nobody's cutting class. Everybody's doing what everything they're supposed to do. So yeah, it's perfect right now.
Oh, I love the first week. So good.
Yeah, everything is good. Everything is smooth. I couldn't ask for more good.
Good.
Hey, Amir.
Hey Julie, how you doing?
I said hi, Spoon. You didn't say
Oh,
nothing.
I didn't hear you. I see you like, oh, that's Julie right there now. How you
What's
doing?
up? Amir and Marcus are in too. Tori about to be in, I think. Let me Hey, Isaiah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm trying to switch over. I just got this new computer, whatever. I'm trying to switch the Zoom from my phone to my computer. So give me like a minute or two. But good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well.
Good afternoon.
No, it's morning.
Okay. Not where I am, but all right. All right, so it is 5:31. I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off. It is great to see a whole bunch of familiar faces and some new friends as well. This is the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. It is Thursday, September 1st, 2022. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded on YouTube for perpetuity. And so don't say anything you would later regret. My name is Zeke. I chair the task force. Again, it's great to be with you on this very auspicious Thursday. To some of the new folks who are joining us today, first off, thank you for being here. It is really, really, really good to have some young people. We always have some great young people, but to have even more young people is really gratifying. So thanks for being there. Just quick reminder from me to you on October 6th, and I know folks are going to forget this, but I'm going to remind you again between now and then, the task force is meeting in person at City Hall, right, Ann?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. October 6th, 5:30, we will be at City Hall. We will not be online. We may do try to do a hybrid thing for those that can't make it or have COVID concerns still. But for the majority of folks, we will be in City Hall. Dinner will be provided, and it'll be a great opportunity to get to see each other in person. Also wanted to share that we are having a candidate forum on mental health for the folks who are running for school board. We feel like this is a really important issue impacting everybody, but particularly our young people. When we think about the mental health challenges that have been caused by the pandemic, by toxic stress, by trauma. And so we really want to know what the 4 people who are seeking to represent us on the Baltimore City School Board think about it. As most folks know, this is the first time we have any elected members of our school board. So it's down to 4 candidates. 2 folks will get elected. And so at 6:30 on Monday, September 26th at Center Stage, we will be having a candidates forum. Some of the groups that are co-hosting are Healing City, the Youth Healing Alliance, the Black Mental Health Alliance, Central Soul, and Baltimoreans for Educational Equity. So would really encourage everybody to come through. I think it's going to be just a really good opportunity to hear, to hear from some folks that want to represent us in a very different way. So with that, we are going to, hang on one sec, Julie. 6:30 on September 26th at Center Stage. What's going to happen, Julie and others, is we are going to, in about 6 days from now, we're going to put out a blast on Center Stage's website. Folks can purchase tickets. It's free, but you got to grab a ticket so that we can just make sure we know who's coming. So that'll be soon. And I will, in our next Trauma Informed Care Task Force, we will post the link in the chat. So with that, unless there are any other announcements for the good of the group, we are going to go into our Round the Horn, which is, for those that are new, just a small group opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves and just kind of open up and build some relationships. And so the question for tonight is, what is one important lesson you've learned during your work or personal life in the past year? So again, it's in the Ann's got the agenda in the chat. Ann is going to blue us into little chat rooms. But the question is, what's one important lesson you've learned during your work or personal life in the last year? And I will see you on the other side in about 5 minutes.
It's going to be just a tiny bit slower getting folks into their rooms. So give me like 30 seconds and we're getting you moved. But I just didn't want you to be like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, Phil, there will definitely be vegetarian options at the task force meeting.
Yes. Okay, everybody should be assigned to a room now. So you should be able to move to your
Oh.
room. Franny, you and I are not assigned. You and I will
Okay.
stay here. But everyone else should be assigned to a room. Okay. All right. I have to go off camera because I need to like communicate with our presenter.
Do it.
So I'll keep assigning people to rooms, but everyone's been assigned a room.
Okay.
Hi, Anne. This is Katie. I should be in the medical task force group.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So we are first just doing like randomized get to know you question. So at this
okay.
point, you'll just be with random people. And then when we break into committee work, you'll be with the medical group. But thank you for reminding me because I would have messaged you and been like, Katie, remind me where you go. So
Okay, awesome.
You should just be with a random group at this point.
Okay, I think I might need you to put me back.
Okay, let me see if I can do that.
I think you put me in 5 at first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See-
it says.
Yeah, see if you can just join because you came back to the main room and I can either move you rooms, but I can't move you back into a room. Okay, great. Great.
I just booted her out of 5 and put her in 6.
It's great.
Just because, but go for it. Hey, Mark. Oh, he can't hear me. Hi, Mark.
Hey, what's going on?
So we are, oh, hi. We are in breakout rooms right now discussing this question that I just put in the chat. What's one important lesson you've learned during your work or personal life in the past year?
That's a good one.
Can I move you to a room?
Sure. Throw me in.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. We'll put you room 4. All right. Hopefully you got that invitation. Hey, Brendan.
I have a really not a great grasp of time for these breakout rooms.
So to me, it's looking like some rooms are probably done because they have like 3 or 4. Oh, actually, most people have 3 or 4. And then there's one room that has 5 and one room that like randomly has 7.
It's like, how did room 4 get so big?
I think
I know how it happened.
I put Mark in there
Oh,
because
got it.
when Mark came in, I was like, let me put you somewhere. And I didn't like calculate.
All right, I'm gonna close these rooms. People are ready.
Oh, okay.
All right. Welcome back. Okay, so before moving toward the diversity, equity, and inclusion portion of our meeting, I did want to just briefly share that Franny has joined us as a Leadership for Educational Equity Fellow. She is awesome and does outstanding work. She was a teacher here in Baltimore. Going to give Franny a quick minute to introduce herself, but wanted to let folks know that Franny is going to be taking over some of the admin stuff for the task force. And so you will probably be getting emails from Franny moving forward. But again, Franny is awesome. It's nothing but a joy to have her on our team. And Franny, I don't know, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. First thing I'm going to do is just quickly put in the chat my phone number, just if you need anything while we're in this meeting, like if you need to be moved in a breakout room, go ahead and text me. But yeah, like Zeke said, I'm Franny, new to the team. I'm a public policy fellow with Leadership for Educational Equity, mostly working on like Healing City stuff and the Trauma Informed Task Force. And yeah, I was previously a teacher. I taught math in Brooklyn, South Baltimore. And I'm excited to be here and to work with you all.
Fantastic. Please give a big emoji welcome to Franny. Thanks, Fariha. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Corey. Lindsay. Great. All right, fantastic. And before I pass the mic to Fariha for our DEI, I did want to give anyone who is new at the task force just a quick, like 30 seconds to come off mute and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Akram. Franny had actually met me at the trauma summit that we had, the Baltimore Trauma Summit. So that is how I was introduced here. I am from the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center, which is with the University School of Medicine. Yeah, I'm a research assistant, so I'm still kind of new to the game, but hopefully I can get to know everyone better here and be part of the wonderful work that every one of you guys are doing. Franny has let me know a little bit, and I'm very excited to join you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Akram. Thrilled to have you here. Anybody else who has not been at a previous meeting? Going once, going twice. All right, fantastic. Okay, so I am really, really, really excited about today's diversity, equity, and inclusion portion, in large part because it comes from one of our folks. So I'm going to pass the mic to Fariha to introduce our DEI.
Thank you, Zeke. Good evening, everyone. I am personally so excited to introduce our DEI speaker, the amazing, the wonderful Desiree Dixon. She'll be presenting on the topic of understanding stigma and trauma as mental health care barriers. I've been lucky enough to be on a panel with Desiree before. I've talked with her. She's brilliant. She's a founder and CEO at Bolton Therapy and Wellness, which is just in the neighborhood where I've been teaching at for many years. And she's also a doctoral candidate. So I'm really excited to learn from her tonight and to have her in this space. Hey, Desiree.
Thank you for that, Farida. Hi, how are you, everyone? Welcome, welcome, welcome. First off, I want to apologize to all the visual learners. I had a beautiful PowerPoint presentation and I'm on travel and I saved the updated version to my desktop back in Baltimore mistakenly. So I promise when I get back, I will forward the presentation because I worked really hard on it. So I want you guys to have it. But we're just gonna talk. I have some notes, so we're just gonna talk from that tonight, and then we'll have some questions. So thank you for that intro. And can you show the first video, please? Just want to give you guys a little bit more intro around the work that I do. When people ask me, well, I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a coach, and I'm a consultant. But those are my titles. But what do I do? Every day, I'm privileged to have a private front row seat to some of the world's greatest stories. And a lot of these stories are painful, they're traumatic, but they're also stories of perseverance, of healing. They're about triumph and transformation. One of my favorite titles that was given to me by my clients is Trauma Transformer. I got that title because I help clients heal from identity-based trauma. And what is identity-based trauma? Well, IBT is the result of the marginalization, the discrimination, the assaults on our souls, our minds, our spirits of some of our core identity factors like our race, our gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, class, right? And it goes a lot deeper than that. Our core identity can also include our hair texture, our skin tone, even our body size. Society, particularly American society, has rules. It puts a lot of us in boxes based on these identities, these characteristics. And these boxes, they come with labels that tell us about the content, right? Who can do this and who can do that, who's more intelligent, who's less intelligent, more valuable, less valuable. We get all these messages about our value in society, and they start from birth, as early as we can imagine. They're rooted in us before we're even born, right? And so by the time we're adults, all of these messages from society, our communities, our families, our friends, are swirling around inside of us. It's like a preloaded computer chip, an operating system, whispering this stuff, influencing what we believe about ourselves, about how we feel about ourselves, what we dream about, how we move. And that's what makes IBT so challenging to heal from. It's not just one and done, right? It's not just a few isolated events. If you're Black, if you're a woman, if you're queer, if you're disabled, you know what I'm talking about. The marginalization of being othered, it's gonna happen over and over again. And every time it happens, it's gonna impact us a little bit or a lot. It takes dealing with a lot of these painful memories based on past childhood hurts, right? But on the other side of that, when my clients were able to push through it, they felt so much better. And so a lot of times they would just lean back and say, woo. They would just exhale and smile. And I got obsessed with creating and recreating this feeling over and over again. The feeling of relief, of joy, after a client finally worked through these issues that had been there and causing them a lifetime of pain and unhappiness. For a lot of us, life just feels gray and muted. What would it feel like to go from that to motivated, engaged, vibrant? What's your story? And how can we collaborate to create and recreate joy? How do we get you to your woo? Everything I do every single day is about helping people transform into their best, most authentic selves. I'm Desiree Dixon, and this is my masterclass on living your best life. Thanks, Anne. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why I do the work that I do, but specifically mental health, the importance of educating others on it accurately, and how identity that I talked about connects to stigmatization, and especially in marginalized communities. So to start off, I want to tell you a story about mental health and stigma that I experienced many, many years ago. So before I became a social worker and a therapist, I worked in HR. And one of my roles that I really loved was creating mentorship programs where I connected scientists and engineers at the organization where I worked with Baltimore City students who were interested in STEM careers. And I had the chance to meet some of the brightest students around the city. And I really hoped that these programs would make an impact on their lives personally, and certainly on the city of Baltimore. But then I was baffled that despite their brilliance and their enthusiasm, most of the students weren't able to complete the program, or they lost interest in working for a lot of the organizations. And so when I asked them about their experience, they shared with me a few key pointers: that they didn't feel welcomed, they were sometimes more shy and visibly uncomfortable in the workplace setting, and no one noticed. And they also didn't feel like they could be successful. They didn't feel like the staff, most of whom didn't look like them, truly saw or understood them and their backgrounds. And they also described barriers in their lives that prevented them from showing up to work and doing their best. And for many of them, those barriers were related to mental health challenges. Right. And so this didn't hit home for me until one evening when I was dropping one of the students off, and she told me that she couldn't go into her house yet. And I asked, why not? And she said, well, my mom told me that she was busy and that I can't come into the house until she's done. So I have to stay outside. And so I asked her if there was a relative or a neighbor where she could go. And she said no, she was just going to hang out on the steps until she could go in. And so instead I said, all right, let's go get some food. We got some food. And then we sat together in my car for hours until she could go in. This was a preteen girl who was outside alone. It was after 9 p.m. on a school night. And she shared with me that this is something that happened to her on a fairly regular basis. And it struck me that if I seemed more stressed about it than she was, because for her it had been normalized. And so this and other experiences gave me a better understanding that when the kids told me that the mentors didn't really get them or understood where they were coming from, or that they had other issues going on in their lives, why they couldn't always show up and just be in the way that they needed them to during the program, I got it, right? I was finally getting it. And so for many of them, it wasn't just about getting A's and getting great grades and finding a job and, that sort of thing. This experience and others stayed with me because it highlighted that the STEM programs that I was so hopeful were going to change their lives were never going to be enough for these kids. And because primarily they had a host of other barriers that needed to be addressed, including mental health and systemic issues. And so this is one of the reasons why I changed careers and became a social worker and now a trauma therapist. Then now I've been working in Baltimore for over 10 years. And so for more than half of the 20 years that I've been in Baltimore, I've been in the mental health field. And in that time, I've learned the importance of identity and how vital it is for each and every person to be able to tell their story, to feel seen, and to be partnered in their own mental health journey and in their healing. And so my primary understanding of mental health and the stigmas that come from it are both because of my personal work, my clinical work, as well as evidence-based studies. And so in today's presentation, I want to cover 4 topics. We're going to talk about a general overview of stigma of the mental health field, particularly in marginalized communities. And then we're going to look at the related barriers to mental health access with a focus primarily on Black communities, because that's the majority of our community here in Baltimore. And third, I want to share some of my perspective on the relationship between stigma, mental health, and identity, which is based, again, on my clinical work and current research. And then finally, I want to discuss solutions that can reduce the stigma associated with seeking mental health services, highlighting those that the task force is uniquely situated to address. And so first off, according to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health, there are millions of people in the United States who are dealing with mental health issues, yet only a small percentage of them actually seek care. And members of marginalized groups disproportionately are impacted by this. And for example, African-American adults are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress. Serious, not just general or baseline, serious psychological distress than others. And so despite the greater need, just 1 in 3 African-American who struggle with mental health issues actually seek and receive appropriate treatment. And so all of these studies indicate that one of the main reasons that people don't seek mental health services is because of the stigma associated with it. And so that stigma operates on multiple levels. First, on an individual level, which essentially is self-stigma, how I perceive myself. It refers to the negative attitudes, including the internalized shame and those with mental illnesses have about their own condition. Then there's a public stigma, how groups or broader society views a person with mental health issues. And then the institutional stigma, the systemic stigma that involves policies of government and private institutions that intentionally or unintentionally limit the opportunities for folks with mental health challenges. And so let's talk a little bit more about individual stigma. It may show up for many as shame, silence, fear about one's own mental health issues, right? And some of the myths associated with it is having a mental health issue makes someone mentally or spiritually weak, right? And so they just need to toughen up. That's the belief of the way to address it. And so this result is that individuals then avoid seeking mental health services, right? For example, parents may not necessarily seek mental health services for children because they fear attracting attention that could lead to maybe a CPS involvement or their child being singled out in school, right? They may avoid talking about or revealing their own mental health challenges. And so they then rely exclusively on other sources of support, including their churches and their families and friends. And then public stigma, right? A significant percentage of people believe that those with mental health issues are more violent, more likely to exhibit unstable or dangerous behaviors, less reliable and capable of making good decisions. They're viewed as more dishonest, not to be trusted, that they're spiritually and mentally weak or have other character flaws, morally deficient, or somehow being punished by God. They're not curable. they're doomed to poor outcomes, deserving of ridicule, right? Not valuable to our society, or can't adequately contribute to our society, or that they're just faking it. Since mental health issues, the belief is that they aren't real. And so according to a study published by the Journal of Health and Social Behavior, significant percentages of the people surveyed don't want to socialize or be friends with someone with a diagnosed significant mental illness. 38% of the people do not want to move next door to someone who's been diagnosed with a mental illness. 56% don't want to spend an evening socializing with someone diagnosed with a major mental illness. 33% don't want to make friends with someone who lives with a mental illness. 58% do not want to work closely with someone with a mental illness. And 68% don't want someone with a mental illness marrying into their family. Now, looking at the institutional stigma, evidenced by the lower funding for mental health research or fewer mental health services that are provided relative to other healthcare services, and there are fewer protections that prohibit or reduce discrimination against people with mental health issues. Okay. And so this stigma makes it difficult to gather accurate statistics about the levels of mental health. And it's even more so pervasive with the COVID and all of the issues that have resulted from that. And so people continue to hide their mental health issues because of the stigma. They don't want to talk about it. And so it's hard to understand the true scope of the problem, right? We do know that there's a huge gap between the number of individuals who need or seek the services. And we also know that the stigma is bigger within BIPOC communities, especially Black community. And so the stigma can have a devastating effect. For example, University of Washington, in a study that they did, found that Black high school students are almost twice as likely as white students to attempt suicide without reporting any thoughts or plan to do so. And so in other words, Black children get fewer warning signs that something is wrong. And so this means we get fewer opportunities to intervene with treatment that could literally save their lives. And so what are some of the related barriers to care? Well, in order to reduce the mental health stigma, we need to understand why it exists within particular populations. For marginalized groups, mental health stigma is interrelated with other barriers to care that stem from the societal discrimination that they experience. In Baltimore City, approximately 63% of the population is Black. And so any initiative to reduce the mental health stigma in our city needs to consider how this stigma shows up in the population, particularly any unique issues stemming from the specific experiences of these members of our community. Some notable studies on mental health stigma in the Black community have occurred in the past 2 decades. And so some of these are a little bit older, but the findings were specifically on Baltimore. And the strength of the studies is that they focus on the particular views of the individual participants themselves. And so in other words, the researchers asked the participants directly what they thought about the mental health barriers. And one of the primary issues that they said was a barrier to seeking care was stigma. They identified that right here in Baltimore. But these studies identified other related barriers to care as well, including a culture of mistrust, an inability to access care due to lack of finances, lack of knowledge, or lack of proper support, and a cultural emphasis on self-reliance as the sole or best coping skill to taking care of any mental health issues. So looking at the culture of mistrust, I think most, if not all of us, know that Baltimore has a long history of systemic mistreatment of the Black community. And this includes the medical and mental health systems. And so accordingly, cultural mistrust is warranted, right? It's warranted and is a real barrier to mental health care in our community. The cultural mistrust of mental health system falls into three main areas: the mistrust of the overall mental health system, the mistrust of health service providers specifically, and the mistrust of the efficacy of mental health treatment and its interventions. And so in one study of mothers experiencing depression, particularly expressed the fears that, one, they fear losing their children if they were to seek mental health care for the depression, or being owned by the system, the expectation that the provider would misunderstand or judge them, and a fear of being punished or pushed to take medication, or concerns about being committed to the hospital. And so when it comes to mental health care, fears of the system are, again, completely warranted. Last year in October 29th, 2021, the APA formally apologized for its role in supporting racism and the harm to the communities of color, right? They finally acknowledged that the field has supported for a very, very long time white supremacy. And so this formal acknowledgement is its first step. It's going to take a lot of work to undo the harm caused by the long history of misuse of psychological science to support systemic oppression. But validation is an important first step towards helping the communities heal. The cultural mistrust and stigma are interconnected. A big cultural concern that often comes up is fear of being put in the system or being marked as mentally ill. We think about the word stigma, right? It's related to a Greek word that means to tattoo or to brand. And that's how many folks describe what they fear happening. How does the mental health system brand people of color, especially Black people? Here's a typical way that it happens. So there's a kid in school in Baltimore, right? He's having a bad day or a bad week, and he's getting into fights. He's turning over tables in the classroom. He's getting into altercations with the teachers and the administration. So then what happens? He gets put out of the classroom because the teacher is overwhelmed with having to manage his behavior and having to balance that with teaching the curriculum and managing the other students in the class. So he's sent to the school counselor. School counselor's primary role is to diagnose, and that diagnosis is likely only going to be based on the behavior that was exhibited in the classroom. Then the diagnosis is given. He may be given a bipolar disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. And then after that, the behavior continues. And so he gets moved out of that school, maybe to a level 4 or 5 school where he's barely learning and fighting even more than ever. And that atmosphere simply creates a pipeline to prison system that he then either ends up with a diagnosis of conduct disorder, eventually either land in juvenile detention or just quit school altogether, right? But what if someone, when he first showed up and was getting bullied and was getting into fights in school, what if the teacher or someone intervened and asked him what was going on, right? And talked to him about his experience as opposed to just focusing on his poor behavior? What if he was able to express to them that what was actually going on is he and his siblings aren't eating regularly, and there's a lot of concern about his mother's safety, there's domestic violence in the home, lots of chaos, right? And he is just angry and overwhelmed as the eldest child, trying to hold it all together and take care of everyone. And so he came to school and he lost it. What difference would it have made if the intervention wasn't about his behavior, but trying to understand the underlying root cause of what was causing it, right? What if they could help him engage in finding ways to cope and helping him to find the resources instead of just shipping him off to someplace else and him becoming just another part of the system. Giving diagnoses that are often rooted in bias is one of the biggest stigmas that gets placed on young people and adults, and another barrier to why people don't engage with the system, right? In addition, relying on repeated documentation that relies on the expertise of clinicians and doctors who are often unaware of their own biases, right? And this documentation then follow these kids for the rest of their lives. And can you play the next video for me, please? Here's a video that will hopefully explain some of what I'm getting at.
Good morning. How are you?
Cool.
So, can we talk about how you got here?
Yeah, you think I got a funny looking face? I just thought it was funny.
Hey kids, I'm telling you, go right here.
Man, we ain't doing nothing.
Go right here before I'm called cops.
So, you didn't do anything?
Nope.
Then what's all this?
Depends on who's reading it, I guess.
Well, looks broken. Skateboarding, huh?
Yes.
Is this the first time you've hurt yourself?
No, I get hurt all the time.
At home?
At home? He hurt himself skateboarding at the park.
Okay, ma'am. I'm gonna have a counselor come in and speak with you.
A counselor? For what? He's okay.
Well, I done told you them tricks were gonna put you in the hospital.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, too. A nurse will be in a few minutes to help you check out.
What's up?
That doctor thought I did this to him.
How you doing?
Hi.
It ain't fair.
Fair has nothing to do with this. This is about you taking responsibility for your actions. Look, I know so many young men just like you that didn't do anything. And yet, most of them are in prison.
You don't know me. I ain't going to no prison.
If you don't want to end up in prison, you're going to have to get some new priorities and probably some new friends, too. Look, you're not getting any younger. You need to get an education so you can get a good job.
Like you? You just like everybody else. You think you see, but you don't see. You see what you want to see.
I see what's in this folder. It shows me what you've been doing.
I ain't doing nothing.
I am not doing anything. Stop!
I ain't doing nothing.
I'm not doing anything. And yes, you were. Get to the timeout chair. Now, please. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
Thanks, Anne. So there are two narratives at play in this story. This young man is trying to tell his story, but everyone in the system overrides his narrative. The dominant members of our society have a lot of power, right? The clinicians, the doctors, the police officers, right? In those roles, these folks have the power to shift the narrative of this young man's life in whatever direction. And for many of them, the feeling of helplessness around being able to change that narrative happens daily, over and over again in our city, right? And these dominant stories are reinforced by documentations, CPS files, police reports, medical reports, and then the documentation helps to create a reality that what we call subordinate folks in our society have little to no say or influence over that reality. And that just becomes their story. And so there's so many places where with the stroke of a pen, a misdiagnosis or an overdiagnosis, a dominant decision maker can arbitrarily impact someone's lives drastically, right? And so dominant members of the society need to be of our society, of our system, need to be more aware of the biases and more aware of the power that is given to them when we have the opportunity to make decisions about folks in our lives. Because it takes, for many, even blind luck, right, to not become another statistic. And so the system operates on autopilot and just compounds over time, creating roadblock after roadblock for these young kids that for many start to feel insurmountable. The third barrier to accessing care is a sizable portion of Baltimore residents live in poverty. And so the inability to access care due to financial limitations is a real concern. Residents may also lack the knowledge of available services, or it's too difficult to navigate the system, right? And so many folks know that the mental health care system considers socioeconomic status, race, and other marginalized factors when considering the type and amount of mental health care delivery that they get. And so often they believe, rightfully so, that they may not be given the best available care because it may not be the most financially prudent for the organization to deliver. And so they believe that many of the providers don't truly see them. They'll say things like, they just want to give me medication and send me on my way, or they aren't interested in actually getting to know me as a person. Many will describe having therapy with clinicians who don't even look them in the eye. They spend most of the time writing notes, looking at a paper, right? The fourth barrier is a cultural emphasis on self-reliance, what's called the superwoman or the strong Black man syndrome, right? There's a strong belief in the community that we have to be strong enough to deal with mental health issues on our own. And a lot of this comes from a belief that the system or members of it aren't there to really help us. And so in many cases, there's a belief, rightfully so, that in some ways it hurts us. And so it perpetuates this idea that we're the only ones that we can depend on. And so this strong self-reliance, hard work, trying to achieve and be excellent becomes the sole coping mechanism for many. And so the belief that therapy doesn't help with real world issues such as racism or other social identity stigmas or identity-based traumas is real. And so where do these cultural beliefs and stigmas come from? Dr. Joy DeGruy coined the term post-traumatic slave syndrome, which many of you are probably familiar with. But for those of you who aren't, it refers to the collective trauma that comes from generations of slavery, Jim Crow, and discrimination. And so the theory is that the Black community has passed down narratives and coping skills that serve a portion under those systems, but may not be beneficial today. For example, slaves were not allowed to show sadness or any kind of negative emotion. This could result in them being punished. And so it's also believed that Black people do not experience grief or no real emotional stressors in the same way that others do. And so the legacy of these ideas may be reflected today in our culture. The idea that for Blacks, mental illness isn't real. Or again, if we just toughen up and accept that hardship is a part of life, we can get through it. And so DeGruy also discussed the importance of storytelling and narratives, that narratives are an important way for passing down both coping skills and sharing stories of tough experiences, of traumatic experiences from our ancestors. And to promote resilience and sometimes literal survival, we share knowledge about ongoing racism and oppression from a protective and defensive stance, right? And this conversation is colloquially known as the talk. Many of you are familiar with the talk that describes the shared effort of an African-American collective to prepare others in the community for the inevitable experience of racism and oppression in daily life. And so many of the clients that I've interacted with tell me about their stories shared within their own families about a relative who was misdiagnosed or mistreated while in a hospital or in a mental health setting. And so there continues to be a real fear about being vulnerable in these spaces. They also have internalized the messages they received from families and communities about the realities of these systems and how to survive them. And a lot of the advice amounts to self-reliance and avoiding care in these systems as much as possible. And so, like DeGruy and other researchers, my thoughts about mental health and the stigma evolved as I worked with clients and listened to them tell their stories. I also came to see the importance of narrative and storytelling as the crucial, very, very crucial role that it plays in identity development. And so when I started working in the mental health field over a decade ago, like most practitioners, I used the traditional tools that I was taught in school, that I'd been given. I diagnosed my client with anxiety or depression or whatever other diagnosis using the established framework from the DSM, and I gave them traditional coping skills and treatments. And their goal was to feel happier or more fulfilled, to have better relationships, or to have a more successful life or career. And they would say things like, I want to get help with my depression. I want to learn how to handle my anxiety better. I want to learn how to handle my anger better, right? The unspoken assumption in these is that the issues are their fault. And so this isn't a surprise if you think about it. The treatment model that we are taught as clinicians is mostly about treating a disorder, right? The term disorder implies there's something abnormal that needs to be fixed. And so they would explore the root cause of the depression and anxiety, learn some coping skills, feel better, often momentarily, and then they'd graduate from therapy. But then in a few months or a few years later, they'd come back and they once again were still exhibiting the symptoms of depression and anxiety. And then added to that, now they felt like a failure. And they'd ask, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just get past this? Why can't I get over this? Right? And the reason that they could not get over it is because they were being repeatedly re-traumatized. The depression and anxiety were simply symptoms of the discrimination and marginalization that they experience on a daily basis, that they didn't believe was something that they could do anything about. And these experiences affected and continue to affect their sense of self and how they view themselves and their identity. And so self-identity is how we identify, define, and perceive ourselves, right? It stems from the sum of our memories, our experiences, relationship, values, etc. But it also stems from a range of social affiliations, such as roles that and affiliations that are placed upon us, things that we don't ask for, like our race, gender, who our parents are, teachers, our caregiver, etc. So from a psychological perspective, every one of us has a self-identity, and it impacts every aspect of our lives. Our personal self-esteem, relationships, career, spiritual life, the meaning for us, right? All of that is a part of our identity. And many of us want to move through the world in a way that best reflects our authentic self. And so in our quest to achieve this, essentially is about narratives, the stories that we want to tell about ourselves. We've all heard the line that we should write our own stories, but that isn't always easy, because the stories that impact our self-identity don't just come from us. They also come from society, especially if we are a part of a marginalized group, right? Societal values, systems influence our narratives a lot more than it values the way that we view ourselves, right? And a lot of these are embedded, these values in the system are there before we're even born. And so society gives us all kinds of stories, labels, stereotypes, expectation based on some aspect of who we are. Again, our role, our race, gender, et cetera, et cetera. But many of these stories are inherited. For example, my Blackness had a meaning in this society long before I was born, right? I inherited that. Even though I was born in Jamaica, it meant one thing there. When I moved to the United States, I had to learn what being Black here meant and the impact that it would have, and the impact that I had to learn, especially because my parents not being born here, I wasn't given the talk. And so a lot of what I learned was just from real life shocking experiences about what it meant. Societal systems and institutions are some of the key drivers in communicating these narratives. And when I say societal systems, I don't mean just society at large. Some of those include our communities, our families, and our friends, right? Our community and families send messages to us about what it means to be Black from birth. And it's not just individuals imposing this. Again, it's every institution that reinforces their expectations on limitations on what it means to have these identities. So using myself as an example, what happens to me and my sense of self when I see myself or want to see myself as driven and capable and smart, but society says, well, because I'm Black and I'm from, I was born poor, I'm going to be lazy. I'm not valuable. I'm not intelligent, right? And then we use psychological science to reinforce that there's evidence that supports this, right? What if no matter how hard I try to present myself as all the positive things that I describe as that I want to be, I'm constantly battling the negative views based on my race, my gender, where I was born, et cetera. And so navigating this conflict and managing this trauma creates an extra psychological burden for those with marginalized societal influences. And it can be emotionally exhausting. And so identity-based trauma, as I have defined it, is a psychological, emotional, and physical responses to a distressing event or act where the event or act attacks, marginalizes, and implicates one or more core identity factors of the traumatized person. And so for people with marginalized social identities, depression and anxiety are not standalone issues. They're often symptoms of IBT. And so in other words, walking around while Black is hard and anxiety-ridden and depressing And the problem isn't the person walking around while Black. It is society. It is not the individual who is disordered. It is our society that is disordered, right? It is our society that needs changing, and the work that has to be done is around our society. And so I describe it this way. There are three narratives at play. There's my story, right? The autobiographical narrative, our individual story, the background narrative, which is the story that society and all has decided about who we are, and with the labels and stereotypes, and the somatic narratives, somatic meaning our bodies, right? So our autobiographical, how we see ourselves, right? The background, the preloaded, like a computer chip with preloaded data that's constantly feeding us. And often, if you're marginalized, feeding us negative data about who we are and what we can be. So imagine the programming of what the capabilities are of a young girl growing up in, say, Syria, looks a lot different from what the capabilities of a young Black girl growing up in Baltimore City, right? But it doesn't matter. That narrative is what it is. And it takes a lifetime to unlearn that when it's being reinforced by our family and friends in the talk, and it's being reinforced by all the systems that the individual is interacting with. And so this narrative includes labels, again, and limitations that are often feel insurmountable to overcome. And so the final narrative, the somatic narrative, is the narrative that takes place, the narrative conflict between who we want to be and what the background says is happening to us shows up in our bodies. And so that is what I call the somatic narrative. So those symptoms of anxiety and depression are showing up because the body doesn't lie, right? It is the truest narrator of all. And so symptoms that often show up of like tightness of the chest and headaches and panic attacks and fatigue, et cetera, many of those symptoms that would often get diagnosed with something else in a DSM, if you are part of a marginalized group, often first is more so about identity-based trauma than it is about other factors in your life. And so many will go to their medical doctors looking for a solution, and they won't be able to find any. And then they might go to therapy. And if that clinician doesn't see them, right, doesn't really see them, there's no way to really address the problem in the way that it should. And so oftentimes it is because of these issues why the stigma around and the stigma and barrier is there for why folks it's difficult for them to engage in the process. So there's an analogy. There's an analogy that is often given that talks a lot about where the idea that trauma is viewed as an isolated incident, right? That just, if we were able to just help the individual take care of the issue, that everything else in their life will be great. But one of the things that we need to address is that when it comes to members of the marginalized group, it's not that simple, right? And so let's talk a little bit about what are some of the solutions then that we can provide to help with overcoming the stigma. The challenge with most of the solutions that are in the field is that in order to reduce the stigma, there is a lot placed on the primarily responsibility of the individual. So the idea is that, well, I need to overcome this myth that the field isn't, that there are issues around the field, and not taking into account that the belief that I have, that the belief that I may get misdiagnosed, et cetera, those are based on real experiences. And so we can't just educate folks on the benefits of mental health without helping them to understand and acknowledging, first validating that their feelings are genuine and real, and acknowledging for them that and starting to work on that change. In the case of marginalized communities, the communities have real experiences, real histories with the systems of harm that they've experienced. And so again, individuals of the community are not disordered. It is a system that is, and that needs to change. And so our focus should be on continuing to change these systems of oppression so they're no longer oppressive, and that can start to build the community of trust that's needed to help folks engage in the process. The most effective solutions will validate the very real concerns about the systemic mistreatment, right? And so receiving, someone in the community receiving public assistance should not fear that getting this means that they're going to get substandard service, et cetera, et cetera. And so some of the things that I've seen work is working with members of the community in helping them to tell their story in order to help to be a partner in their mental health journey, right? When African Americans decide to seek mental health services, they tend to rely on relationships that feel familiar. So partnering with those services is one of the first things that we should do. And so within these networks, we want to encourage seeking care from the services, from the providers that they've identified as folks that they trust, including faith-based, and other areas. We've talked about some of them here on the task force. And so looking at some of the other ways that we engage, especially with young folks. One of the things that I do is offer like hip hop therapy, helping folks to understand how to use ciphers, like the ciphers used as a way to help them tell their story, and why that cipher is important, because it helps them to talk about their narrative separate from me intervening and wanting to impose my view on them, right? Using music, using things like double Dutch and drumming as a way to mimic bilateral stimulation, which is one of the ways that we know is effective in helping to reduce anxiety. And so there are a lot of best practices that are out there, but we need to make sure that as we are looking for the solutions, we're not simply imposing more views, but we're partnering with folks to help them address their what they know are things that they can use every day, coping skills that they already are using, help them see how those things are ways that they can access the support and the services. Okay, I see Zeke telling me to to wrap up. So let me just make sure. I think I covered most of the main points. So yep, that's a good pause. It's a good pause. I'll send you guys the presentation. And so certainly, if you guys have questions now, or if you have questions once you get the presentation, feel free to reach out. Any questions for me?
I just want to say absolutely fantastic talk. Super, super, super interesting around stigma and some of the somatic responses. And just, I think your methodology is incredible in how you elicit and engage with young people. Not trying to rush you, just know we have another group that is going to present to the youth group. And so I just want to make sure they get their time to do so. But please give a huge round of applause for virtually and otherwise for Desiree. Awesome talk. And if anyone has a quick question, now is the time.
Yeah, I just had a question about the presentation. You all end at 7, right? Promptly.
Yep.
Can we reschedule? Because I think that we'll only have 10 minutes, and that's not.
Yep. Yeah, we can definitely do that, Julie. Let's.
Or maybe the youth committee can have a separate, I've asked for it before, a meeting, a work meeting. Because we need more than a half hour anyway to.
Well, first we were texting each other a little bit while, let me put my video on. I'm a little wonky, so I turned it off during the presentation so I didn't freeze. So we were texting a little bit about rescheduling, but we wanted to also let you know we thought this was really time well spent, and that was a fascinating and wonderful training. So thank you so much. It goes to we were where we were supposed to be doing what we were supposed to be doing, but we would like to reschedule. That's okay.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. Let's to Phil's point, let's talk offline and just figure out a time, whether it's the next task force meeting or just a separate meeting with that subcommittee. And yeah, let's definitely reschedule that. Again, thank you so much, Desiree. Outstanding presentation. Big fan of your work. And, I think particularly, as we think about the need for an acknowledgement and understanding of identity-based trauma. And, I think the term now is cultural humility, and how to not do the things that the white folks in that video were doing to that young person over and over and over again, and how to support young folks and also acknowledge, I think, to the larger point you were making, just the horrific systems that impact all of us, and to not stigmatize mental health, but also to not pathologize people and communities, and particularly communities of color. I think is such an important message and could not be more timely given all that is going on in our world. So again, appreciate you, and thanks for dropping so much knowledge on the task force. It is a pleasure to have you as a scholar in residence at the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. All right, so with that, we have about 16 minutes left. So let's jump into subcommittees. I know we're not going to have as much time, but I feel like that was totally worth it anyway. So let's use the next 15 or so minutes to do some work. But again, appreciate you, Desiree.
All right, I've opened the breakout rooms. This main screen is the screen that is designated for the youth focused group. I know we have a lot of visitors and wanted to make sure that folks were in the place they needed to be. If you are not in the youth focused group and I've left you in this main room, could you just put in the chat where you would like to go, and I will get you moved. So the youth committee is staying on this main screen.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Ann. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining and staying on for that awesome presentation. Like you guys may have heard Youth as Resources say, we had a really they were coming in to give us an exciting presentation that I will let them, if it's okay, Julie, just give kind of like a teaser, like an overview of what maybe next meeting, either a work meeting or our next meeting, that presentation will entail. And maybe if it's all right, the folks that we're going to present, if they could just introduce themselves really quick to the group.
Yeah.
Hello. Go ahead, Julie.
No, I was just going to say, go ahead, Marcus, and Isaiah was.
Oh, hello. My name is Marcus. Me and Isaiah, Isaiah, we'll be basically presenting this presentation next go around. Our presentation is consistent of youth homelessness and our plan, like our movement around this past summer, and basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I'm gonna just say data. I can't think of the other word I was thinking. Looking for. I don't know why. Data we have collected, and basically what are next steps, in asking y'all for basically feedback and any assistance, because the assistance matter.
And I just want to jump in right behind him. My name is Isaiah Green. Y'all can hear me, right?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, all right, cool. Thank you. Because these I just made sure these earphones connected. Yay. So I'm part of Youth Action Board. So one thing about us is, as what he said, we collect the data as well as raise awareness, as well as finding solutions to youth homelessness, housing instability, depending on what category they land in, and that's something we're going to be discussing in our next go round. Who are we, why are we here, and that things of that nature, and then also asking for any other tools or any other help that we can get. The more help, the better.
Well, I think one of the things that you could be helpful with, because I think you have this information. So the presentation talked about, a lot of times we just focus on, well, what kind of services somebody need? What kind of program do they need? And I think, again, having talked to you before and listened, I think there's also the issue, as the speaker talked about, is that we have the structural problems that the school system isn't necessarily, set up to do what needs to get done for lots of different reasons, not the personalities and things. It's not, and it's not just our school system. So your thoughts about, again, the children are back in school. Are we going to have one more year of them, not experiencing what they need to experience, or what are some of the structural things? Again, both because you're students, and it's again, some of you people might know, hey, in this school they're actually able to do it, and in this other school they're not. So I think, again, talking to us, again, I know you have some of the data already, but thinking about not just what programs needed, but how do we get below that and really help the system actually function and be more positive.
Right, Dr. Lee, that's a good point. And that's some of the recommendations that you'll hear that Youth as Resources and the Youth Action Board helped to guide the work that we did this summer. They were our advisors of sorts. Would you say that was accurate, Isaiah? You all sort of advised us in the work over the summer.
Yes. It's a little bit more detailed, but overall, yes.
Yeah, a little more detailed. Do other YAR board members want to introduce themselves? Or is Eddie still on here and other Youth Action Board members?
Oh yeah, I'm still here. Hey everybody, Eddie here.
Hey,
I
Eddie.
know many people in this room. I'm the Youth Collaboration Coordinator, HPRP, and I let Isaiah do the talking. He's a Youth Action Board member. There will be more of us next time since we are rescheduling. So we're gonna have a couple more come through and give you guys all the information you need.
Okay. YAR people, do you want to introduce yourselves real quickly?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Amir. I am part of Youth as Resources, been here for quite a long time. I'm newer to the Youth Action Board collaboration side of things, but enjoying the experience so far.
Hi, I'm Kai or Ruben from YAR. I was on the team during all the stuff this summer. I'm the administration and task force manager for YAR. I guess I'll see you all next meeting.
Anyone else who's able to introduce themselves, please jump in.
I'm Mariah. I'm the secretary of YAR.
I can introduce myself. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Christopher. I'm the youth. I forgot what it was, but I'm under Marcus.
Yeah, treasurer.
Thank you, Marcus. Treasurer.
You're welcome, bro.
Great. Anyone else?
My name is Kaylee. I'm the Healing Youth Alliance ambassador. Yeah.
Where do you go to school, Kaylee?
I go to Poly. I'm still in my uniform.
Oh, is Lorraine here? You know Lorraine? She was hopping in.
I don't think so.
No, she ever hopped in.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think we can talk offline if we want to set up a separate meeting, or or if the 15th would just be easier for everybody. But I would love if we can use this space and give, and specifically this group, because there's a lot of folks, educators on the call, and folks who've worked in schools for a number of years. So we'll talk offline, and definitely send everybody an invite if we do decide to do this outside of the regular meeting, to give it the most time possible. But I just want to thank and apologize to the crew that came out today, and that we aren't getting able to the presentation with the time that we had. And I did want to just give a little bit of space. We already started some introductions, and so I also wanted to allow one new face in the group to introduce himself as well. Jake, if you wanted to introduce yourself to the team, since you'll be joining us regularly.
Yes, thank you so much, Mariel. My name is Jake Carlo. I'm a new master's candidate at the School for Social Work, working with Mariel and Dr. K. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you all very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. We're so excited to have you with us. It's awesome. And I wanted to give a quick update. Obviously, we're running out of time on the Parks and Recreation and our meeting that we had a little over a week ago. And so, Ryan, if you wanted to give some highlights, or anybody else that was on that call can pipe in too, about kind of where things are with that.
Okay, so we did have youth as resources on the call, and they pretty much gave some good insight and gave some great ideas to Parks and Recs, and they said they were going to take it into consideration. But with Parks and Recs, we're still waiting for a hard date or soft date for the launch of the teen centers. So we have another meeting in about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and we're gonna trying to revisit the plan that we had before and try to actually see if they have a date when they're actually gonna open. But they also said that outside of the 4 teen spaces that are opening, they are gonna have programming for 2 other rec centers. I know one is Oliver, and the second one I don't know right now, but when I do get the information, I will give it back to the group. But those are the updates. And Dr. Leaf was there as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. And one thing that we were thinking about, just because we know that these big institutional and systemic change can move a little bit slower than the speed at which we meet as a group. One potential idea that we wanted to throw out to the group for you guys to ruminate on over the next couple of weeks until we can revisit it is maybe thinking of a letter of recommendation that we can provide Parks and Rec, using our multidisciplinary background around some of the things that we've talked about of how parks or recreation centers in Baltimore could center healing better and center teen voice better in the city. And so that's one thing to kind of start thinking about, if that would be a good, more immediate output for this group in the near future. So definitely think on that. And if anyone is particularly excited and thrilled about that idea, please let me know. Happy to delegate some of that. The work of setting up a template and getting that going.
There also is discussion. So there's a couple of RFPs that are out that are relevant that people are thinking about applying and using the rec centers as some of the sites. So actually they meet much more quickly than our format of every two weeks. Because so I think having, getting together with YAR as possible, as soon as possible for, a time where we can really hear from what they're saying, and then thinking about what are some of the decisions that are getting made. Since school has opened, the plans for doing stuff in schools are going to be finalized in the next 3 weeks, meaning for the rest of the academic year. And so if we want to have input, which I think particularly getting some of the input of the things the young people came up, we got to get into the task force is not making any decisions. We got to get the information out that we're hearing into those people that are making decisions, and they're making it in the next 3 weeks.
Also, I wanted to say, what Phil brought up before, we're trying to get as many youth into those different meetings or different meeting times to set up with the youth, but also we have to try to figure out the schedule of the youth as well. So if the meetings can be around after 4:30, 5 o'clock, I think that would be perfect for the youth. And I definitely want URUS there, or try to definitely meet with URUS, because I feel like they're going to be prominent, what am I trying to say? Prominent people like going forward, especially the youth.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question? So sorry. Dr. Leaf, are you saying that you need YAR to meet with, you would like the YAR presentation and presentation to happen for Parks and Rec? Because of the, or are you saying that there are?
Parks and Rec is only one of the pieces that a lot of the decisions about what's funding city programs in city schools, community schools, as well as a number of the announcements that have come out from both Baltimore's Promise are in the process of collecting data, and not the Baltimore Promise one, because that's just other things, but the other people, the administrative things for city schools, after school programs and community school programs have to be made. And then the plan is to make them before October, because they're for this academic year, and 1 month of the academic year is already going to be over. So those people are making decisions about what's going on. I think even just the brief information that we had, as you know, was said, Ryan said, and Julie was there, you know, that there was a brief discussion with the folks, which is why we wanted to have the broader one. So again, in the chat, I also said, because I don't know what's going to be presented, but you people at YAR do, are there people that you think should be hearing those that we could actually invite to that meeting that you're going to be presenting at? And again, I don't know how often you regularly meet, but if there's a day you regularly meet that would fit into what this is, maybe we could see whether we can get to that day, because you already have your young people already being there at that time, as opposed to trying to find another time for them.
And can I also just jump in and say something real fast? I think that's a good idea as well, because of the fact that one thing about us is, as well as we are putting out the fact that we're seeking awareness and all that, we're also looking for recruitment for the YAB side. I can't speak for the YAR side, I can only speak for the YAB side, but the YAB is still looking for recruitment for ages 16 to 24. So that's a good opportunity to see if many more people want to join and become one of us, you know, stand on a platform of saying, hey, we're here to make change. So that would be a perfect opportunity.
Awesome.
I would like to add that YAR is almost always recruiting. So if anyone is interested.
So it sounds like a little bit of a cross connect, but it sounds like there's two requests out there. Maybe one is that we are going to reschedule the presentation where we're asking for a lot of feedback around youth homelessness, which is something that we that our YAR and YAB family work on together. And then there's the Department of Recs thing where we went to a meeting but weren't sure really how we could be useful.
Mm-hmm.
We have some ideas of some programming we would like to see in rec centers, but we weren't sure that they were open to that.
I honestly believe, like, when you guys were talking about how you wanted to train like their staff on youth homelessness, I thought that was a great idea. I don't understand like how come they didn't see that at the time, but I feel like if you present that, or if you can try to present that to them again, they probably most likely, hopefully they're more open to it, because I feel like that was a great idea. And also you guys have people inside the public schools, like you said, like one of you, your girl said, y'all are in the school. So for you guys to like kind of be there with us and try to promote and also like teach them about youth homelessness, I think that's a great idea. And I think you guys can definitely be a part of this moving forward.
And also that means, because the people we were talking to were focusing on those 4 schools, 4 rec centers. There's 54 rec centers. We get the chief of other people, some of whom have been in our youth committee before. So again, it's just making sure that, hopefully that they can make the date that we're going to hear the YAR people on. But again, if we, have, you talk to Mariel or something, here's the kind of people who would be most important to have there. And let's try to facilitate their being there and listening to the young people. And and hear, again, and hearing it on their turf, it just sort of reinforces that there's a group of young people actually making decisions and collecting information and wanting to help implement, not just having other people implement. And I think there's a number of people on the other work groups and task forces that the city has that on a particular topic, they'd be interested in showing up for, including potentially a couple of the deputy mayors.
We can, I think Marcus and Isaiah and you all can talk offline about what a presentation moving forward would like. We were glad to be in this training today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I want to be a good steward of everybody's time. So
Right.
we'll connect, set up that time for the presentation and follow up on all of those awesome ideas and continue this conversation at our next meeting. But I just want to thank
Also-
everybody who came out, especially the new faces in the group and our presenters. Just thank
Where's
you so much
Spoon?
for being here.
Spoon still in? Spoon, you in here?
He's in a different group.
Why?
I don't know. It makes me upset too.
That's some BS. He needs to be in here.
Agreed.
All right. Hey, Mr. Parsons. What's good? All right.
And I was
It's
also,
nice meeting y'all.
I was also going to say, whenever you guys have another meeting, Julie, like if you have a regular meeting, please can you invite us so we can like kind of hear your ideas for real, and then just try to see like how we can get you guys involved into Parks and Recs as well.
Right. I think that's what they were going to do tonight. Going to ask you for your ideas, right?
Yeah.
Present some of our, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Parks and Rec sounds,
All right.
looking forward to it. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right. Thanks, everyone.
But yeah, if y'all need anything, just contact me or Edward, Mr. Edward.
Yeah.
I'll make sure Mr. Edward send all our emails to talk to the Yab outside the Yab.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Our people,
With the systems and conflict one, maybe we could talk about
Right,
what we
right,
think
right.
about.
all right. Chris, Marcus, you guys, can you be in the office by 10 tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
just meet at Career?
Oh yeah. Yep. I could be in there about 10.
Okay. You good,
I
Chris?
can be in there by 10.
All right. And Tora Rooney
All right.
9, right? So we can do that work.
Yep. See you guys.
Catch you later.
And I talk to y'all on
Yeah.
a different time. We can when we
Yeah, we
reschedule
good.
about.
When you
All right, Isaiah.
when you up the street? Because what? Eddie got our. I think he has a link to our calendar. But anyway, whenever you're up the street, just come down and eat with us or something.
No, Lydell has
Okay.
the link to our calendar, I believe, or does Eddie too?
I don't remember if I gave him the link. Oh no. But
I
yeah,
feel like
I'll make sure.
Lydell is the
I'll
one
talk to him
with
to make sure.
Yeah, I know for a
I'll
fact
figure
Lydell
out. And what?
yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
But I
We'll
love you
figure it
guys.
out.
See you.
All right, heart y'all. Bye.
Bye.